Here's a little controversy for you. This is not scrapwood. The half board of cherry. And a very good looking one, I must say. These are not scraps either. They are potential rails or picture frames. This is what I call scrapwood. Different length, different thickness. For me, when you say you use scraps for a project, or I'm making pen blanks, you actually need to make a middle project in order to achieve the final product. So for the time being, let's say I'm making 3 laminated cutting boards. I'm trying to sort out the scraps by thickness to limit the passes through the planer or drum sander. The goal was to get at least a 20mm board, which is a hair above 3/4 of an inch. And of course, it did not go as planned. I wanted to use all of my exotic wood cut-offs, mostly Padauk and Purple Heart, also a little zebra wood. They are all scraps from pen blanks. Wait a second. I'm using cut-offs from pen blanks, make a cutting board in order to make other pen blanks. I might sound like a cheap woodworker. Something that isn't cheap is my new bandsaw. I needed a more powerful machine with a greater cut capacity. Obviously, you won't see the difference when cutting 45-degree strips from an inch thick board, but on the next video you will. The knowledgeable woodworker watching this video may wonder why I did not use a table saw with a 45-degree sled to cut the strips. It would be faster and more accurate, and with a good blade I wouldn't need to hand plane the sides. The problem is, I hate my table saw. It's too small, it's powerful alright, but not accurate at all. And it makes a rattling noise when reaching full speed that shakes my vagus nerve into cowardice. I guess the next machine I purchase will be a table saw, or to be more precise, a cabinet saw. And that is not going to be an easy task, because here in France and Western Europe, panel saws seem to be the standard. They take up a lot of floor space, and I don't care about the sliding carriage thingy, as I don't work with sheets of plywood. I mixed the strips around to form a Michaels blank and glued it back together. because I was afraid that with those 45-degree cuts, the whole board would shift on me. I decided to glue the strips in pairs, then the pairs together, and the corners, until I had 3 chunks, and I could use a corner clamp with little to worry about. The process took a very long time, as it was the end of winter and beginning of spring, and the weather was miserable here in the northeast of France. It was cold as usual, but way more humid than usual. This had slowed down the drying of the glue tremendously. As I'm marking the second 45-degree cut, I realize I've made a mistake just marking those cuts, as the goal was to make a chaotic pattern. Cutting the strips at a constant width was not a smart choice. It takes away the entropy of it. Maybe this shows how the human brain is wired. We always look for a pattern to follow, even into complicated things that have so many variables that it would be mad to want to quantify all of them. Isn't it the definition of madness? You repeat the same action over and over and you expect the outcome to be different? I don't agree. I think madness is to want the outcome to be exactly the same. For instance, you flip a coin in the air, and it would be mad to think that it would land on the floor at the same spot over and over, even if you calculate the height, velocity, wind direction, and whatnot. What would be truly mad is expecting the coin not to fall down. Unless you're in the International Space Station, in zero gravity, if you flip a coin, you're an astronaut. What I'm trying to say is that we should embrace chaos a little more. There are some things in our lives that we can control, and some we just cannot fathom. Shit happens, as the sticker used to say. Well, life happens. The last cut is a 90-degree cut, and in order to add a little more disorder to my chaos board, I changed the strip width. The first 10 or so were 4mm wide, the next 10 5mm wide, and the rest 6mm. And the boards keep getting shorter. Now the pen blanks. I've tried 5 different layouts, if I remember correctly. First, I just cut a 20 mm square pen blank from one of the boards. Second, cut it in 2 halves, turn one half around, and glue them together. Third, I cut 2 halves from 2 different boards. Number 4 and 5 are the same as number 1 and 2, but the blanks were cut at 30 degrees. I drill the holes for the brass tubes, 7 mm on the left and 9.5 mm on the right. I always scratch the shine off the brass tubes before gluing, as it gives a better bond to CA glue, with a special treatment to the ends, as it is where you don't want glue to fail. I'm getting frustrated with that barrel trimmer system. I've got 2 of them. No matter how often I sharpen them, I rarely get a clean surface. It does okay on single wood pen blanks, but I often get tear outs on laminated blanks. I seriously consider switching to a squaring jig, but then I'll need to consider buying a disc sander and finding or making space for it, or worse, selling a tool to pay up for it. I start sanding at 120 grit with the lathe running at about 400 RPM. Then stop the lathe, hand sand along the grain, remove the dust, and go to 180, 240, 320, and 400 grit. Between each grit, I raise the grain with denatured alcohol. I apply 2 coats of cellulose sanding sealer. I buy it pre-thinned because I don't want to play with chemicals. I wanted to try Aussie oil for a long time, and I finally took the step, and I don't regret it. Granted, it's not a cheap product, but it's easy to apply as it is a friction polish, and the result is so shiny that even putting carnauba wax over it will actually dim the shine. I don't know about the durability of the product or the resistance to wear, but let's be honest, who writes with a pen every day nowadays? One thing I would not do if I ever make Chaos pen blanks again is I wouldn't use oak wood in the mix. I love oak, don't get me wrong, but in furniture making, on small items like these, I think it dulls down the look. But there's also one thing I would do, and that is cheating. Yes, this project is guaranteed 100% small scrapwood. But if I have to do it again, I would throw bigger chunks of wood in the mix to speed up the process. I guess those scrapwood woodworking YouTubers were right. This is scrapwood.